This is Mr. TG. This is the third video of lesson 6-7. What I thought I'd show you how to do is how to find first of all, how to graph a square root equation. If you're presented with one, in this case we are, it's this g of x is equal to the square root of x minus 2. And we're going to graph its inverse and demonstrate that on the grid. So what we're going to do first is demonstrate to you how I actually can sketch this square root equation. To do that, we need to find the domain and range, because remember, the domain are all the numbers that I can put in for my x values. Now remember, square roots, we don't want a negative under the square root sign. So we can put a 2, and if I put that in for x, 2 minus 2 is 0, the square root of 0 is 0. That's okay. But if I put a 1 in, now all of a sudden I have a negative 1, and I can't square root a negative. So 2 is as low as I can go with this. So I'm going to create then numbers in my domain, which are all numbers greater than or equal to 2. I'm going to create numbers in my domain that not only work, which they will, but also will give me a perfect square, such as 3. If I put 3 minus 2, that's 1. The square root of that is 1. The next one I would probably do, I could put 4 in, but that's 2, and the square root of 2 is 1.414. We could certainly use that. But what I'm going to do is put a 6 in. Try and make my life a little bit easier. 6 minus 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I end up with that, and I think I need one more. Let's put in an 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. The square root of that is 3. So now, as you can see, our domain is limited to all values greater than or equal to 2. Now you can kind of see how our range is limited. Our range has to start at 0, so y has to be greater than or equal to 0. All values greater than 0. So what we're going to do now that we have a few points to plot, is we plot them. We start at 2, 0, 3, 1, 6, 2, and 11, 3. And what you have here is a half a parabola. And if you remember the prior example, we had a whole sideways parabola. This is only half because it only has a positive in front of the square root sign. If this would say plus a minus in front, then we'd have that lower half. And that should make sense to you because, well, hopefully you can see that since we have a positive square root, all these positive answers would work. If this had a negative, it would be just the lower half. If it's plus or minus, it would be both. Now, that's your original function. Now, what we're going to do with that is we're going to find its inverse. And the first step in that, of course, is to change the x and y's around. So we end up with 0, 2, 1, 3, 2, 6, 3, 11. If we do that over here, we end up with 0, 2, 1, 3, 2, 6, and 3, 11. And you can see half of the parabola form going upward. Now it's only half because remember our domain and range also change. They will also flip around just like the x and y. So the domain is going to be x is greater than or equal to 0, and our range is going to be y is greater than or equal to 2. It's just a reversal of this. So there's your graph of the inverse of the square root. The equation will look like this. If we start with y equals the square root of x minus 2, we'll square both sides. First of all, we should change the order of the x and y. Let's just rewrite this. So we got y is equal to the square root of x minus 2. If we reverse the x and y's around, it looks like this. Then we need to get at that y, so we're going to square both sides. So x squared is equal to y minus 2. That negates the square root. And then the last step would be to add 2 to both sides. So y is equal to x squared plus 2. And that becomes your equation of your inverse. That's essentially this graph right here. So a little different approach here. We're giving you the square root equation and having you find the inverse of that. Hopefully that went well for you. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.